My name is Isabel McConville, and I am a bookseller and associate producer here at Barnes& Noble. And we have such a treat for you today on Poured Over because today you're getting two Isabels in one podcast episode. I'm so excited to be here with Isabel Ibañez, best-selling author of The Secrets of the Nile duology, Woven in Moonlight, Written in Starlight, and more. But today we're here to talk about her dazzling adult debut, Graceless Heart. Isabel, thank
Woo!
you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. You've got a really great name. A really
Oh,
great name. You know.
so do you. What a
Thanks for
treat that we
having
get to talk to each other. I know it. This is so fun. I'm so excited. First, I
me.
just have to say I loved this book so much. I was swept away by the characters, by the story, by this setting. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you're feeling right now? We're taping this before the book comes out, but we're not very far from publication. Can you just tell me what you're feeling, what you're doing right now?
I feel I am in all of my feelings. Everything. It never gets easier. This is my, let's say, sixth novel. I've done a few other like short stories and I've done a workbook, but this is my sixth novel. And it doesn't get easier. It really feels
Wow.
like I am having a massive birthday party and I'm inviting everyone, and I don't know who's going to show up to this birthday party that I'm having, this release that I'm having. I feel really proud. Also, I wrote this book after, in the midst of having very young twin babies. And I also wrote it when we had a really bad flood where I am in Western North Carolina after Helene. And so
Wow.
have water for weeks and all this. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get this book back to my editor? So the fact that it exists, I am so proud of it because it was quite an endeavor to get it from start to finish, written and researched and edited. And the book that you will have in your hands is after having many, many nights of sleeplessness and tears and all the feels. So I am in my emotions.
Oh, and I'm so glad this book exists. It's just so great. I loved it so much. I wonder if you can give our listeners a setup of the story and what we're going to be talking about today.
For sure. So Ravenna Maffei is a sculptress living in Renaissance Florence in 1478, and she has this secret. She has inherited a magical talent, and it's just one little strain of magic, but she has it, and it's enough to condemn her in the eyes of her neighbors, society, in the political landscape of that time. And so she has kept this secret. And then one day, her brother is captured. And the only way that she can free him is by participating in a sculpting contest. Then she decides on a like last minute and at great risk to herself to reveal her magic because she knows that infusing the statue that she is going to be using in this contest will expose her that she has this terrible secret. And once she does, she gets kidnapped and squirreled away to Florence, where she is tasked to do this very mysterious sculpting project for an immortal family. And if she fails, the heir to this immortal family will have to kill her. Oh no.
Oh
Doom.
no.
It's like
Um,
and enemies to lovers. It's a very slow burn, and yeah, so there's a lot to it happening in this book, as you know, because you've read
there's a
it.
lot happening, but the way that you weave everything together just feels so seamless.
Oh,
I never felt like there was anything out of place or too like spectacular for the world that you built. You know what I mean? Like we get a little bit of the Fae, we get a little bit of vampire lore, we get obviously like the immortal family, we get magic and witches. But it all makes sense with
oh,
the 15th century Florence, and also we have the Pope in there, and throwing all those things into like just a magical cauldron and seeing what came out of it really must have been fun.
so fun. I want that time period, the Renaissance. When I say it, it is filled with so much lore. We
Hmm.
have innovation. We have the tension between religion and science. We have so many people who are coming up to the very edge of their knowledge and going beyond that. It's an exploration. There's so much happening. And I thought, well, what if the fantastical happened? What if this time period was just infused with magic and wonder, everything that is already filling the imagination of these people in this time anyway? What if it all became, what if it was all true and they lived in this world of heightened possibility? And I loved the idea of exploring that in a
Oh,
real sense of time and place in our real history and combining historical events with the magic so it all feels believable because they believed that. They believed witches exist. They believed at that point dragons existed, you know? And so all these different things, I thought, well, what if it's true? What if their imagination is actually true? And what kind of world would that feel like?
oh, that's so interesting. Do you remember what the actual spark for this book was? Like how you knew this was the next book you were going to write?
Yes, I love history. I love history. And I am particularly drawn to this era of Renaissance. It was blooming across multiple countries, and people began waking up, you know, and asking questions and wanting to, you know, satisfy their different curiosities. And so I had this thought, I think it'd be so cool to set a book during this time period when people are already asking fun questions. And then who could I follow into this world? And I immediately thought of a woman because I wanted to give her a talent at that point that was ruled by men. I wanted to give her an ability, a skill set that was unusual for a woman to have. And also in this time period, I find it very sad, interesting, odd that they would look at women who were particularly talented and either call them a witch or an oddity,
Mhm.
persecute them, you know, like it was just out of the norm. And I
Yeah.
wanted to follow a woman who was talented in some way, but was hiding herself in this world. And I thought first that she might be a painter, but there was something about making Ravenna a sculptress where I thought that she was literally forging a creation. And I thought it would be an interesting parallel for how she would forge her way in this world. And so that was the spark. It was Ravenna, it was Renaissance, it was that tension of women in society, talented women in society, and how they might exist in all of these constraints.
Oh, wow. That sounds fantastic. And it was fantastic in the book. Um, Obviously, already established that coming of age young adult novels has been your thing in the past.
Yeah,
Have you always known that you'd eventually write an adult novel, or how did you know that now was the time and that this was the story to do that?
that's a really interesting question, Isabel. You know, I love young adult because to me, young adult is this question of who am I? You're going out into the world for the very first time. And Ravenna, she's in her early 20s. And in that
Mhm.
time period, though, she's basically middle-aged because
Right.
life expectancy is a lot shorter. Women are being married much, much earlier. They have families by this point. And so, but I also thought that she had lived enough with fear and she had lived
Mhm.
enough of being kind of the oddity in her family that I thought that it would give her some kind of wisdom and it would give her a little bit of a backbone as she went out into the world. And I wanted to explore that. And I thought, especially with this world, since it was going to be so far from home, I thought the adult world would feel a lot more interesting for me to explore in that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I'm always interested in hearing about how the actual writing process differs from YA to adult.
Yeah.
Did you find that you drafted differently or you planned differently? Obviously, you're now accounting for like more adult subjects, but did you feel that your core voice changed?
I I don't think that my core voice changed in the way. I
Yeah.
think I write the same in the sense of like I'm always drawn to very lush writing.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like a very slow meander through a forest and I'm taking my time and I'm seeing every leaf, tree, whatever. And I love that feeling of getting lost in a world. When I was writing Graceless Heart, I was aware that I felt like I had a lot more freedom to
Hmm.
slow down. In YA, I pay particular attention to pacing. And in
Okay.
YA, I think that the pacing, you're moving at a faster clip and things are a lot more plot focused, I think, and you can and character work, of course, is so important. Why, of course, but you are moving at a faster plot. The books are
Yeah.
inherently a little bit shorter,
Hmm.
so I guess you're getting to the point just that much faster. But in with Graceless Heart, I felt this world is so big and there's so many historical figures and there's this elaborate magic system. And then we have a character who has this wound that she's been carrying. I thought that I could slow down and really trust the reader to go on this journey with me. And so
Hmm.
I think that was the difference, was that I could take my time a little bit with introducing this world and inviting the reader into a very big, big, magical, whimsical Florence and trust that they'd want
Yeah.
to go there with me. So I think
Oh,
pace
yeah.
would be the big one.
That makes sense to me. I think too that there isn't a huge difference when it comes to voice, like you said, with
Mhm.
YA and adult, also because I think that we should be free to come of age no matter how old we are. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I feel like right now there's a great, I don't know if trend's the right word, um, but there's a lot of great novels coming out about middle age and people
Yeah.
rediscovering them at middle age. And I just think that we're always coming of age and we're always getting to know ourselves, which is why I still like reading a lot of YA, even though
Yeah.
I'm already in like my mid 20s,
Yeah.
because you never, or at least I never tire of that discovery, you know?
Yes. Well, I also think you learned something, and
Yeah.
it makes you. I'm in my early 40s, and I write YA. I still read YA, and I think because there is something about putting my mindset back to how I felt as a teenager
Yeah.
is useful, even in being in my early 40s.
Hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
sometimes the longer you go on, the more steeped you can become in your perspective, worldview. And in YA, there's something so fun about exploring different avenues to pursue and ways of thinking and perspectives and what have you. And also, I feel like teenagers, at least I was this way, I had no real sense of self-preservation. I just thought everything was going to be okay. You think you're invincible, right? And so
Hmm.
there's a beauty in revisiting that feeling and bringing that back as you get older. Yeah, things are still
Absolutely.
possible.
Yes, things are still possible, you
Possible.
know?
Yes. Yes.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Imagine that. Yeah.
I'd also love to dig into Ravenna's character. She's the courageous sculptress at the heart of the novel, hiding
Mm.
her magical abilities, like we said, as a witch, um, from the world and from herself a bit. She's very terrified of herself. She doesn't know how to address this part of herself. I wonder if you can tell me about forming her character, how you established, like, her motivations and personality, and what really made her come alive for you.
Yes. I think I love this question. I have found as a human being on this earth that there are things about myself that I struggle with, to get really real. There are things that I'm still afraid of, or I still, to this day, I'm very afraid of being direct or saying what I need or
Yeah.
having a confrontation. There's stuff that I still have to navigate and give myself a pep talk to do, even as a woman in my early 40s, as a mom, as a like wife, and
Yeah.
trying to live as a healthy, happy human being. And so with Ravenna, I started to give her a lot of what I hope are just human qualities that are, you could see something in yourself that you don't like and that you're
Mhm.
afraid of. And what would it take to start learning how to love yourself and who you are? Also, alternatively, there are times where I might look at another person and I might feel frustrated. Sometimes that happens like with my brother or this people who know you best. And I'm like, why am I getting so irritated by this?
Mhm.
Oh, it's because I do it too. What I'm seeing in another person, I see it in myself and I don't like it. And so now with Ravenna, as I was crafting her character, I thought it's such a human thing, right? To notice things about yourself that you don't like or that you don't wish were there, and you find it in other people, and that makes you maybe not trust them as much. Maybe it makes you more harsh with them. Maybe it makes you less patient. And the whole point, I think, the arc of Graceless Heart is she's starting to learn things about herself and how to accept them, how to love them, how to maybe put them in their place, how to let other parts of herself shine. And it's just growing up, and I'm still growing up. I think she grows up tremendously in this book, but that's what it is. I think it's about learning to love who you are and to learn how to love other people, especially when they have traits that you also have that you don't love. We're all human. We're all trying our best. And that's the clash that she always feels with Saturnino, who is this other character. He doesn't like feeling any of those things and doesn't like even being brought up or reminded, that he has human characteristics. And so she is a good challenge. Like, I'm going to press this button against you and you're going to feel it.
And their dynamic is so fun to read, and we will get back to that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
first, I just wanted to say I loved what you said about using characters like Ravenna almost as like a mirror for the things that we like or dislike about ourselves. I think that's the whole point of reading. That's why we all
Yes.
need to do it more. That's why books are so important. Not only do they teach us empathy, but also the best books I think teach us self-reflection.
Yes, I there is in every book that I write something of myself that I am working through. And Together We Burn, it was very much eldest daughter, being
Mm-hmm.
the and carrying a thought of family legacy. My parents, they're both from Bolivia and born and raised. My dad was born and raised in the Bolivian Amazon, and then they came to this country, and they are quite literally living that American dream, worked so hard, so many hours, and then I'm their oldest child. And I have that weight and
Yeah.
a family legacy and wanting to carry their work ethic, all of that. And so Together We Burn was very much eldest daughter. And I think in this book, it's the inner acceptance. It's also taking the time to know who you are.
Yeah.
That way you can be fully recognizing yourself and then letting other people see it, you know, letting finally having Ravenna be like, you can be fully known and seen and loved. That thing that you're so afraid of to show to anybody else, to yourself, maybe, it's not that bad. It's not. And I think you're right. Reading does share and teach how to do that with people in your life and with yourself.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you bring up her being an eldest daughter because I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about that and the significance of that in the story. So if you want to
Yes.
talk even more about that, that would be great.
I just, yeah, man, so she's the oldest, and it's so maybe this is a recurring theme because I did this in Together We Burn with eldest daughter, and now with like, well, she's only child and she's like only child woman. That's Together We Burn. And then Graceless
Right.
Heart is eldest daughter. But there is something about being the first one where you're taught responsibility
Yeah.
and get imparted with, hey, you look out for the people who come after you.
Hmm.
You pay attention to them, you help us raise them. And it's not like explicit, maybe in some families it is, but there is a you model, you're modeling behavior for the younger kids, right?
And also for her own parents at times
Yes.
too.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I do think like with parents that talk about having a mirror,
Yeah.
their child is the can be the reflection of their own traumas, wounds, but also their pride and joy, their hopes for the future, and their commitment to being, in their craft or career, whatever, something, all of that bleeds into that, into your children. And so Ravenna very much is that mirror, but she happens to have inherited this magical thing that they're afraid of.
Hmm.
So you can, I think that her parents, they love her and are afraid for her future and a little bit afraid of her too.
Yeah.
And it's messy, it's so messy. Love is often very messy. I don't know of any love story that isn't messy.
That's true.
Yeah.
And going back to Ravenna, we find out in the beginning of the novel that her love of sculpting came from her aunt, and she even has
Yes.
a run-in with her own ancestral powers while on a trip with her aunt.
Mhm.
Can you talk about this idea of ancestral magic passed down through women in her family and why you wanted her aunt to be the one there when it happened?
Yes, I wanted her to have someone who would know her and love her and understand her.
Yeah.
And I think that you could have parents who love you deeply, but don't know or get you
Hmm.
and want to support you, but don't really fully understand how to do that. And so with Ravenna, it was important that there be a figure, a maternal kind of figure that would look at her and say, I see who you are. And I know that this is big and scary. And this has happened to me too. And
Hmm.
as much as I can be, I'll be here for you for that. And you know, there is a tension, right? When you have something that your parents don't or the rest of your family doesn't, like she's inherited this magic that nobody else in her family, in her immediate family has. So where is she going to go? Who does she turn to?
Yeah.
Who will she confide in? Who will actually know her? And so I needed somebody. I needed somebody. And that to me, it came very clearly it was going to be her aunt who had gone through the same thing and had given her also an outlet. Because when I on a research trip for this book, I went and I had the opportunity to go into a studio and take a whack at marble. And you have to work
Wow.
really hard. Yes. Oh man. You have to work so hard to make a dent in stone. And I could just picture, Ravenna at the knee of her aunt being taught how to sculpt. She is striking that stone and taking out her frustration, her fear on that stone. And so it all felt married together, all of it. Like all
Yeah.
of it felt right. And it served a great tension point on how I could back Ravenna in a corner and see what she would do next.
Oh,
So,
that's so great. Because it's too, like, we touched on this a little bit, but it's also like a metaphor for control. It's the
yes.
control that she doesn't have over herself, over her family, over the crazy politics of where she lives, over, the magical creatures that could come take her at any point. I mean, this is what she can control, and at least she can make something beautiful out of it.
Yes, yes. While like getting as much energy out too,
Yes.
in a healthy way, in a way that because it's constructive. She's literally constructing something. And yeah, it all felt exactly right. And the other thing too is control is absolutely a theme or the illusion
Mm,
of whatever control you have. If you
yeah.
think about the people who lived in that time, they lived in very violent
Mhm.
societies.
Yeah.
And there's constant like whether or not you're being exposed to somebody in the hanging square, somebody, a whole family dying of sickness. Oh, there's a drought, literally there's nothing to grow or eat. There's always some kind of hard tension, and so this is the time period that she's living in. How do you survive that and navigate that? And for Ravenna, she is whacking at stone and and creating beauty, beauty out of like the utter chaos of her life.
Yeah, we're all just doing our best. It's when the world
Yes,
it feels like it's on
yes,
fire. I mean, I
yes,
guess yeah, it really does it makes you question like what are you doing if you're, backs up against the wall.
yes, yes. Hmm.
I'd love to also talk a bit about Saturnino, the
Oh
immortal
man.
knight and heir of the Looney family.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
terrifying and he's arrogant, but as much as Ravenna is wary of him, she's also intrigued. Can you tell me a bit about creating his character and how you found his voice?
Yes. Oh man. To me, I think that there is something, again, all of my books explore some kind of facet of character, but um I find it really fascinating on how some people, and I can do this too, but they're able to compartmentalize their feelings and to stuff
Mhm.
them away so that they can, do what needs to be done. Whether that's go to work, do this, or what have you, you compartmentalize. You figure out how to navigate your day so that you're not overrun by your emotions.
Yeah.
Saturnino, early on, learn how to navigate life without his emotions. Otherwise, I think he would feel so swept away by them. And after doing this over and over and over again, you end up building quite literally a defense mechanism that feels as thick as a wall. So how do you get through to somebody like that? How do you breach that? How do you begin to have a conversation with someone like that? And that to me is so interesting about enemies to lovers. Because Saturnino, I think, is so afraid of the magical. I think that Saturnino is so afraid of the human qualities that he possesses that he stuffed them so down and it's become a habit and now it's a pattern and now it's who he is, or at least that's who he thinks he is, until it's Ravenna who comes along and starts showing him the messy parts of humanity and he can no longer run away from his emotions. So now what?
Yeah.
That's like the fun part, the scenes between them and the conversations that they have and the push and pull. And I think
Mhm.
that's also why he can be in the book so hot and cold. It's because he's
Yeah.
constantly ramming up against the wall and an emotion. And which one is he going to pick?
Yeah,
Because
he's at war with himself.
yes, constantly at war with himself. And so
Yeah.
which side of him is going to win? And I think and it's always going to be black and white with him because he has learned that that's the way that he can survive is
Yeah.
behind this shut down emotions. Yes, it means I am terrifying, but it also means that I'm not going to get so caught up in my emotions that I start feeling despair or I start feeling overrun by them and I don't know what to do. No one has showed me how to live with these kind of messy emotions. So what do you do with them? Oh, I just don't feel them. Okay. So
And
yeah,
he thinks it works out well for him through his life until at least he meets Ravenna, and then
right.
she tries to tear down those walls.
I think what's interesting about the two of them is that Saturnino early on was traumatized by humans.
Yeah.
And like I've said, like he experienced such a rush of think of the worst moment thing that could happen to you. And you are so afraid of feeling that again.
Yeah.
And also he walked away thinking, these people are terrible. Why on earth would I want to let anyone in ever again? And what I loved about the two, Ravenna and Saturnino, on page together is that Ravenna is as messy as a human being as you can be because we all are. And now Saturnino is starting to learn, oh, people actually live more in this gray area than I thought. It is not
Mm.
such a hard, I don't need to view the world in such high contrast. It's either this or that. They live in this gray. And am I okay with that? And can I be
Yeah.
comfortable with the mess of getting to know another human being? And I think that's the other
Yeah.
fun part between them.
I think that we see that idea played out also in just how he even just addresses Ravenna in the novel. I mean, near the beginning, he's just referring to her as like the Good Samaritan.
Yes.
Because that's
Uh,
all that anyone can be, just good or bad. And then, as
yes.
the novel progresses, he sees that there's a little bit more to her than he thought.
Yes. And the other thing too is when he's calling her Good Samaritan,
Mhm.
he's not necessarily thinking that she's actually all good. I think in the
Right.
back of the mind, he's thinking she's got to be hypocritical. What's the catch?
Right. Yes.
What is the catch? Because there's always a catch. There's always a back door. There's always some kind of subtext to what humans are saying.
Yeah.
What is it?
Oh,
And
yeah.
I that exploration as he starts peeling back away is, oh, so she might not be a hypocrite, then what is she? Oh, so if it's not this, if it's not that, I think that's what keeps him coming back to her over and over and over again. And I think it's what's going to keep him coming back to other people in his life as he starts opening up more. It's like, oh, yeah, anyway, it's the gray.
Also, as we've said, this is set in the 15th century in Florence. The setting felt so lush. Like you said that you love lush books. That is exactly how I would describe this book. It's literally how I described it in my notes. This book is
Oh,
so lush and the setting feels so alive. Can you talk a little bit about your research process for this
yes.
and how you really immersed yourself in this time period?
Yes, I love to research. I studied history in college, and research is like, I nerd out over it, man. Any books that I can read on the subject. But the other thing too is that I was, for the majority of my books, actually all of them, I was able to take research trips and to really immerse myself. So I went to Florence and I spent time there. I went to a studio belonging to a sculptor and I got to, whack at marble and learn different tools, processes, techniques that would have been used during that time period. I walked the same streets that Ravenna did. I ate the same food that she was going to eat. And I visited, of course, museums, looked at different clothing, inspiration. As much as I can, I live, breathe that time period. I did the same thing with the Egypt books. I went to Egypt for 3 weeks to research what the river knows and where the library hides. And to me, it's become part of the process. If I can be in that physical space, it helps me bring it alive and to layer in details from top to bottom.
Oh, that's so great. That's so cool. Was there anything, I know you said that you actually worked with Marvel for your research process.
Yeah.
Was there anything that really surprised you when you were researching this novel, whether it's something that you didn't know before or something that you just didn't expect to love so much?
Uh, yeah, actually, the Renaissance, I knew very broad strokes about the Renaissance as it occurred in different countries, but specifically in Volterra and in Florence, and learning a little bit more about the Medici and Pope Sixtus from that time period, that was fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And it was learning about how Italy wasn't Italy. It had various cities, and it had the Kingdom of Naples, and so all of these very powerful entities are constantly at war, and the one trying to rule them all is Rome,
Mm,
Pope. And whether or not you have an ally in Naples or in Milan or this varies very much on what kind of deal you can make. And I had no idea how cutthroat it was. Because
yeah.
Italy wasn't Italy. Everybody could go to war with anybody at any given point based on, I need this from you. I have the support of this. I want to expand here, this. And but at the heart of all this conflict was always Rome, always was the Pope. And it was an interesting thing to explore how the Vatican worked and operated, religion in that time period. I mean, all of that really surprised me. Um, because in like anything else, you have good characters and bad characters. And in that time period, not everybody was doing things for altruistic purposes, especially at times the Vatican, which again really surprised me because, it's supposed to be the seat of, grace and holy doctrine and the voice of God and all that. I mean, truly. And I thought, wow, how much of that is going to bleed and seep out and cause so much heartache? And that really was fascinating to learn and read about.
I loved reading about that in this book as well because I think that you did such a great job showing how religion and power just have a hold over people, especially at that time. I don't necessarily think that that went away. I think that it kind of is still here in a different way.
Mhm.
And it's very interesting to see how you portrayed it, especially when we get to read actually from the Pope's perspective. Can you talk a little bit about writing from his voice?
Oh man, that was, yeah, yeah. You know, I grew up Catholic. I was born and raised Catholic, taught Sunday school. That was a whole part of my upbringing. And as I was writing from the Pope, I felt that Catholic guilt, like,
Yeah,
whoa, this is, but I tried really hard to pay attention to what was happening in that time period and what was motivating the various popes. And it was not to further the kingdom, it was to further the riches of the Vatican, to increase their power. And I thought that there was something so sad about how the idea that Jesus could be saying one thing, but the person, the Pope, who is supposed to be representing the benefit and welfare of their people, wasn't actually doing that. And that felt
yeah,
really heartbreaking to me.
yeah,
And like anything, the more you give something, the more it could have your soul if you let it. And that's true for any good thing. The more you give something, you could have your soul. And I felt like it was such an interesting and sad time period where they were not really looking after people or the hearts of people, and they were twisting around something really good into such a negative. And naturally, from that, you're going to have repercussions and heartache and war and conflict and power exchanging. And so, writing from his perspective was weird because I'm like grappling with Catholic guilt, but then also wanting to be honest to the motivation of that time period of specific popes who were in power at that time. And they are like wanting people to be murdered. And that's an
yeah.
unusual thing for a pope to want to exhibit as the voice and
You'd think.
representation. You would think, right? You would think. So but I really did. I tried to lean in and I read letters and I like did research on the Borgia, like, I mean, there was just so much corruption at that level. And so there, of course, there's good and bad with everything, but in this instance, it was very much looking after their own self-interest. So that's what I leaned into, that voice was self-interest.
And it was so powerful. I really loved those aspects of the book. Like I've already said, this book was so fantastic. Is there anything that you hope readers take away from it or just feel after reading it? And what are you most excited for when this book finally does come out?
Oh man, there's so much. I hope that they go on the journey with Ravenna, and as she learns to more about herself, as she comes to accept who she is, as she comes to the realization that what who she is matters, and what she is matters, and what she can do matters. I hope that they can look at their own life and see areas of their life and realize, as the whole, I matter, my stories matter, my I matter. I hope that they ask really good questions, because the whole book, Ravenna is asking questions and questions, and sometimes she doesn't like the answer, but that's life. And I hope you get swept off your feet. I hope you love the magic and the love story and the push and pull. But what I really wanted to do was just explore humanity, and
Yeah.
that was the hope.
Is there anything that you're working on now or anything inspiring you that you want to talk about before we wrap?
Yes, actually, and I don't know if my editor is going to be okay with me sharing this, but I'm actually working on another Renaissance book.
Ooh.
And yes, and there is a character in Graceless Heart, and he is in the background. And as I continue working on these Renaissance books, this character is going to show up, and maybe more than one book. But this next book that I'm working on is also set in the Renaissance. It's about a witch as well. It's the common theme. It's a woman, a talented woman, and she is a doctor. And it's set in 1518, and there's one character from Graceless Heart that shows up in this book, and I'm very excited. I turned it in, and I just want to keep exploring more stories of women in this world. And I don't know how much more I can share about that, but let's just say that um, there's going to be more of them.
I'm so excited. I will just be
Yay.
waiting patiently in the corner for that to be done so I can get my hands on it. Isabel, thank you so much for joining us on Port Over
You're
today.
very welcome.
Graceless Heart is out
Yay!
now.
Yay!
Yay!
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.